This episode of MMPQB is brought to you by Unleashed Music. Artists like Dar Williams, Michelle Malone, and even Arctic Monkeys have trusted Unleashed to help get their music heard. When you're ready to take the next step in your creative career, you can find them at unleashedmusic.com.
Welcome to More Music Please, Quarantine Beat. We're exploring how the music industry is staying busy and keeping connected during lockdown, and also just talking about whatever. I'm your host, MK. Let's get started.
On the line with me today from Brooklyn, New York, she's a multimedia artist, singer, songwriter, performer, I'm sure many other things that we are about to get into. It's Chrrry. Welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so Chrrry, you are another guest who I've only met in person like once or twice. You came by and did a set at the radio station when I was there. And I think we met briefly outside BSP before that, but you are another person who I'm really excited to get to know more because we don't know that much about each other.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. I'm honored.
I know that you have an extremely strong aesthetic. I've been following you on Instagram ever since we met, and you are you're crushing the Instagram game.
Thank you so much. It's tough.
What are, so tell me about, so you're a little bit younger than me too. How old are you?
I'm 24.
Yeah, so I'm super interested to talk to you because does that put you in the Gen Z generation?
Technically, yes. I am the first year of Gen Z, 96.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very interested to get your perspective on a lot of things. So let's start out by just talking about you, like what's your musical background and kind of how did you get to the point that you're currently at?
Sure. I grew up singing and writing songs in my childhood. I wrote a lot of prose as well. I always just loved to tell stories. And I started singing with training when I was around 9. And I went to an arts junior high school and an arts high school, which gave me like some very, very rich education in musical theater and classical voice, and continued, developing my own creative process on the side. And, I dabbled in college for a little bit. It didn't really work out, but I did learn a lot and made an incredible network. And now I am back home where I grew up in Brooklyn, and have been, moving around the scene, the local scene for the past few years, and worked on a full-length album, which I dropped in the fall of 2018. Mm-hmm. And that was mostly like a pop R&B album. I wrote it about some like ridiculous trauma and, events and, growing and coming of age that I went through in my late teens and early 20s. And that was like a huge purge. And from there, it's been kind of hard to like figure out what I want to do next, and definitely like finding a lot more of like my own sound that isn't influenced by the people around me as much as it is like genuinely the sound that I produce most naturally, I guess.
Yeah. That's such a tough thing, because I mean, it's impossible not to be influenced by what's around you at least a little bit, and I don't think it's the worst thing either. I mean, obviously, if you're like listening to an artist and just saying like, yeah, I want to make my own version of this, then like you can do better. But, I understand that impulse to like get away from all influences, but also I don't think you can ever help like being influenced subconsciously by what's around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think a lot of the people that I worked with were kind of like pulling my music in a certain direction, and I felt like I had to cater it to those people. And then I kind of just took a step back and I was like, okay, what do I sound like on my own? Like got a lot more into like experimental pop and dark pop and more like electronic pop, like Purity Ring and Muna and I've been like really exploring like that side of the sonic spectrum, and which is exciting, for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's got to be hard too, because I myself, as a songwriter and as a performer, I think I'm pretty like traditional. Like, I want to sing stuff and perform stuff that people can dance to, and I feel like when I saw you at BSP, you definitely had that energy as well, where like you're a really dynamic performer and you were making sure everybody has a good time. So I mean, obviously it's COVID times now, but have you had a chance to perform any of your newer stuff live yet?
A little bit. I have a like really short EP that I've been working on them in the past year. So I've done those songs live a few times during like the end of last year and the beginning of this year when there were still shows going on. And then I've done a couple of the Zoom shows, which were very, very fun, but I feel like got old very quickly.
Yeah, I know. In the beginning, it was like, okay, cool. Like, we're all willing to, pretend like this is good enough. And now it's just like, yeah, this is not a replacement for live music, unfortunately. But yeah, what's it like doing Zoom shows for you? Were you solo, or do you have bandmates with you?
I'm solo, and I've been solo for a while. Ever since I recorded the album, I've only performed, using the tracks from the album with the vocals removed.
Wow.
It's made my life a lot easier because I don't have to coordinate around other people.
Mm-hmm.
When you collect funds, they all go to me.
Yeah.
So, Zoom shows, God, it's interesting because I don't really have much of a home setup at all, and also at the beginning of the pandemic, I had just moved.
Right.
So a lot of my stuff is like packaged or in storage. So I kind of try to make it work as much of like with like creating like the perfect visual setting, because I already knew that like my sound wasn't going to be the most professional sound, because I was literally just putting my backing tracks on my portable speaker and singing over them, unamplified. And I was like, okay, so like to make it like a full experience, I need to make, and I took the opportunity to make the visual experience like and cater it to exactly what I wanted it to in the confines of my home. Because like, you walk into a performance space and like their space is already set up. And usually, when you do these local shows, it's like you have so little time to get it together before it's time for doors. So it's not like to like bring a whole elaborate visual setup is like not always something you can do. So I tried to like take that opportunity to enhance that part. So, I got these cool lights in my room, and took some opportunities to take some chances and like do like musical theater covers and, just experiment, because it's like kind of a completely new thing, like I've never done an online show before, like at the beginning. And it was like interesting. I got to like do some shows on my rooftop, which was nice, and like give people like a view of somewhere that isn't the four walls in their house. Mm-hmm. Or, their own personal space. So it was definitely fun and interesting, but I think like the energy that it takes, plus like all of the interference with sound, and then like connections would drop, and like it was a lot of technical difficulties, and it lag and stuff, like it gets annoying,
a little frustrating.
Annoying and frustrating, and then you're just like reminded of the fact that you're like compensating for something that is missing.
Yeah.
And it gets kind of depressing.
Yeah. It's cool that you've leaned so hard into the visual aspect of it, though. Are you a visual artist? Do you draw or paint or do anything?
What is a like what is,
I guess
like, I'm not trained at all. I don't people like are very like, I'm wary of saying that I am anything in particular because people are so protective of their craft, especially if they spent like a lot of money studying it, and like a lot of time. And I would say like I'm a visual artist for fun and for, you know, enhancement of my performance art and my musical art. Both my parents are visual artists, so I do have a lot of that in my atmosphere. Like I grew up in galleries and stuff, and then like most of my friend group in high school are all visual artists, and my roommate is a visual artist, so aesthetic and visuals are really, really important to me. I'm a visual learner, so I guess like short answer, yes. Long answer, what I just said.
Yes, with the caveat of not being professionally trained. But yeah, like I said before, you know, it's obvious that you have a really strong aesthetic sense. And, you know, I really admire that because personally, I think like my visual aesthetic sense is probably like my weakest. Like for instance, am a terrible graphic designer. I would never attempt to do my own graphic design for anything that I wanted to be taken seriously. Like I just know that it's going to look like shit. So like, yeah, you have a very strong, like, what are some of your influences? Like what, you know, do you follow like influencers? Like, cause you also have really strong fashion sense, which I would love to talk about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I take in content like 24/7 because I need constant stimulus because that's just how my brain works. So I usually like have something on while I'm working, or, you know, I love to watch movies. I really love period fashion and period pieces. A couple things that I've been really into is like kind of Victorian, like French Victorian style. So like I watched Marie Antoinette recently, Sofia Coppola's version, which is like this period piece, you know, about a true story in like all of the extravagance of Versailles with a modern soundtrack and like modern dialogue, which I love that juxtaposition so much. And I tried to like incorporate that juxtaposition into my own art, like of the contrast and duality of like ancient and young. And I've been watching, that and the TV show, it's on Hulu, called Harlots, which is a show about two rival escort houses in Victorian London.
Dope.
And it's amazing, and the costumes are incredible, and it's super, super feminist. And I 10 out of 10 recommend that show. And I've also been binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race like my oxygen.
Yeah, that's very inspiring.
Yeah, so I've been taking a lot of inspiration recently from drag fashion and everything that kind of comes with that, out of that, like camp, anything from John Waters' repertoire, musical theater, you know, like classic culty musical theater. Yeah, that's some of my main sources of aesthetic inspiration.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're also into musical theater. I was also a musical theater kid. Also went to like a theater/musical theater high school part-time for my high school years. And yeah, what kind of like musical theater covers were you throwing into your Zoom sets?
I did a cover of Out Tonight from Rent.
Yes.
I felt like it was so unbelievably relevant.
Yeah.
I was like, get me out of my house.
Oh God.
And like it was Gemini season, and my Venus is in Gemini. I've also like been spending a lot of my time really, really delving deep into like astrology and spirituality during this time. So I was like hyper aware of like Venus is like your season of love and, you know, romance and creativity and all of that. And it was Gemini season in May, and my Venus placement is in Gemini. So, you know, I'm feeling like super, you know, lusty and like, you know, excited about life simultaneously while like trapped in my apartment during a quarantine. And I was like, that song like it reminded me of being 12 and listening to the Rent soundtrack and being like, I just want to go out and party, but I'm 12.
Oh God, same. Yeah, Rent was a big one for me. I think like anybody who's ever been like preteen or teenager and into musical theater, like Rent is like a mind-blowing show because you're like, oh my God, you can have young, cool characters, and then like you get older and you realize that everybody in Rent is terrible.
Oh my God, they're all awful fucking people.
They're so
just
bad.
Like, it's so bad, and like it's like a story centered around two cisgendered straight white men, using all of these like different marginalized people as like accessories.
Right. Yeah.
God damn, Jonathan Larson. Like, why?
Oh God, I know. Yeah, like Mimi is supposed to be like the young hot Latina who's gonna like make his life have meaning again, and then she almost dies. And like I remember when I first like came across a theory online that, well, not even theory, just like somebody like writing a critique that was like, hey, actually everyone in Rent was awful. I was like, oh well, well, Angel's a good person, but then I realized no, Angel's opening number is about murdering a dog.
Yeah. And like, we're supposed to just be okay with that? Like, the dog didn't do anything to anybody.
No, it just barked. I mean, I guess, like, Collins is redeemable, right? Maybe?
Yeah. No, Collins is definitely, like, probably the only redeemable character.
The only one that holds up.
And the fact that also Angel is tokenized as, like, the one trans character and then dies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big problem.
Like, she gotta die? What the fuck?
Yep. Got to bury your gays, otherwise, you know, people might be offended, might want to see the show. Yeah, that's a really funny transition into talking about. Yeah, let's talk about like. Can we talk about like LGBTQ representation a little bit? Because I believe, and feel free to not talk about this if you don't want to, but your pronouns are she, they, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. What was it like kind of coming to, that realization that you wanted to, or that you do identify, not just as female?
Relieving and terrifying at the same time. Something that I've like came to realize was that like I grew up with this like hyper feminine aesthetic and like vision of myself, or like goal for a vision of myself from when I was like 7-8 years old, because I was fat or chubby or like whatever word makes you feel comfortable. I don't like particularly subscribe to that term, but like it's the easiest way to describe like that upbringing. And like other kids called me fat, and like my family, like especially my mom is Brazilian, and in Brazil like it's like all about being like super thin and hot all the time. So my family was just kind of like very much putting a lot of pressure on me to go on a diet and like eat healthy and exercise more when I was like 8. And I was bullied a lot in middle school, and, for being different, for being weird, for being fat, for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And, I had like a pretty like uncooked sense of self, but I did know that I wanted to be sexy, and I wanted to be attractive to men because like everybody told me that I couldn't be. And when I discovered like 1950s pinup silhouette, I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's how I'm going to be sexy. And I married myself to that so thoroughly, to the point that it became unhealthy. And like I felt uncomfortable outside without like a full face of makeup. And looking back, well, first of all, I fell in love with another non-binary queer person, which was unexpected because growing up, I was always like, yeah, I'm bisexual. I like to make out with girls. Girls are pretty. Like, who doesn't want to like touch some titties? Can I say that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
No censorship. We're fine.
and uh and then, you know, but like that validation from the man was like like that need for that was like so much stronger than any of my like actual real emotional desires.
Yeah.
You know, especially like my first love was a girl, and I didn't date her and kind of like really fucking screwed her over because I didn't want my first official relationship to be with a girl, or else that would like brand me as a lesbian for life. Which, you know, at 14 was not something I wanted. And coming out of, you know, some of the really toxic relationships that I had with men in my late teens and early 20s, I don't know, like the attraction kind of died, or like, I don't know, but I was still definitely like searching for that validation until I met the person that I was with for a while. And they're like being like feeling that love for someone who wasn't a man, and like a love stronger than I've ever felt for anybody else, like kind of made me like dial back and reevaluate, like, okay, what's me and what's me trying to fulfill a societal expectation.
Yeah.
And this, like, being around this person and being around like way more queer people, which like ended up being more of my circle once I, you know, transitioned out of these toxic relationships with men, it kind of like opened up all of these doors of possibilities. And it was like, I always was like, well, I can't be non-binary, like I'm too feminine. And that's like not true at all. And then also getting into, you know, astrology and more of my spirituality and learning about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and how my like placements in my astrological chart are mostly fire and air, and those are traditionally quote unquote masculine traits and signs.
Yeah.
And realizing that that is most of what I'm made up of, and then giving myself the permission to explore it in the first place was like the biggest step. And once I like took that cork off, it was like Pandora's box of gender exploration. And I realized that I am so much more comfortable with this fluid idea of my own identity, and this fluid energy that I've allowed myself to embody, and not just focus on being, you know, a girl for the masses and like performing as a girl. And yeah.
Damn, dude. Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to something you just said a little while ago, which is like, what's me and what's, you know, I forget your exact words, but like, you know, what are the boxes that I'm trying to check for society's sake? And like learning how to differentiate those two things, like that's so huge. And that's something that like, that's a conversation that everybody should have with themselves. Especially, unfortunately, you know, cis men, I think, are so much less likely to feel comfortable having that conversation with themselves. But God, they need to. And,
Yeah.
And I mean, and myself too. And I'm very like, I mean, I don't want to sound at all patronizing because that's not where this is coming from. But I'm impressed that, you know, at 24, you've already like, you know, done so much introspection on this stuff and like come such a long way with it, because I'm 31 and I'm still like, you know, kind of unpacking my trauma and realizing like, okay, maybe like you were saying, you know, some of like the need to be seen as attractive in the traditional, like, you know, male gazy sense you know, that's not something that I inherently wanted for myself necessarily, but it's something that I got so wrapped up in as, you know, part of my own value, because, you know, society just hammers it into our heads so hard. So yeah, it's very, very big, complicated topics. And thank you very much for being so open about all of this.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you for, creating a safe platform for it.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in it. I mean, and how much, like, you know, so you had said before that the album that you put out, the full album, I think you said, was very much like written around like some of your trauma and kind of unpacking that. Like, how much of, you know, how much of these realizations came from like channeling this through music and through art? Like, is art a therapeutic process for you a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons I'm having such a hard time making new stuff right now, because like to sit with the feelings that I at least need to like put my honesty into words, and in words with a melody and like a whole, portrait behind it, like sonic portrait, requires a lot of vulnerability from myself. And oftentimes I like this is not healthy, but I like kind of hold things in until like finally like I'll explode like 5 songs, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the last project happened. But that project is a little bit pre-gender realization. I wrote most of that while I was still in college. But it's definitely like it was definitely the beginning of my introspective journey. I didn't do much of that before because it was scary,
Yeah.
But like when you hit your real lows, you kind of have to, and it kind of forces you. And a lot of times I feel like, the universe or fate or like whatever you believe in, like kind of pushes you into these positions if, the circumstances are right to make you see like, hey, you got to look inside.
Yeah. Yeah, it is therapy, and therapy is terrifying and difficult. I mean, I've been through it a number of times myself. I'm not currently going, but like I have a lot in the past, and like, a lot of the times it makes you feel worse, a lot worse before it makes you feel any better, because I have this analogy in my head of all of your trauma being like sediment at the bottom of a pond, and therapy gets in there and just like stirs it all up. So like, things were pretty peaceful and tranquil in the pond, and then all of a sudden like all of the sediment is like swirling around and everything's all mucky and crazy. And like, the idea is that you're supposed to then be able to kind of like, I don't know, like that's kind of where the metaphor ends. I don't know if like the ideal outcome of that would be to like get a pool skimmer in there and like get some of the bigger shit out or if it would just settle back down. But yeah, it's fucking hard to look at your own trauma. And especially, I mean, if you are then going to perform it in front of a lot of people, I imagine that's very scary.
Yeah, I've been experiencing I guess like what can only be called stage fright, which is something I never really experienced that much before, because I've always been such a ham. And like I was like gonna do a live the other day, and I was like, oh my God, why am I nervous? Like, why am I so nervous? Or like I was gonna try to go busk in the park, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do it. And it's like, why? And I think it's because like everyone is extra vulnerable right now, because, a lot of us have a lot of time, and time means thinking, and it's hard to think. But I totally get your pond metaphor.
Good.
I had a similar one. No, I get it. Yeah, absolutely. I had a similar one because I thought of it as like a wound. Like your trauma and everything is like a wound that has scabbed over and not healed right. So you get like, flaky skin or like a scab, and like the scab is always there. And then like whenever you pick a scab, you kind of keep making it worse, So like therapy, let's say, is like you've picked the scab enough times that the wound is like now reopened, and you see that it's like healed all wrong. And then, like like paying attention to the wound, like itself underneath everything, and then like giving it love and giving it care so that it can heal correctly, at least, is the metaphor that I've been working with.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it takes a long ass time. I mean, it's still like, it blows my mind that there are things that, you know, now at 31, I'm just finally like, oh, I can talk about this without crying finally.
Yeah, that's a great feeling.
Yeah. Oh my God, what's going on? It's an ad break in my podcast. Yes, this is a thing that we do now, but because this is More Music, Please Quarantine Beat, we do it for good causes only. And this week I am really proud to support my friend Billy Manis and his amazing book, Kick-Ass Recovery, From Your First Year Clean to the Life of Your Dreams. This is a man who has lived, who has seen some shit, who has recovered from some shit, and has written this brilliant, heartfelt, hilarious book that is, it's not just talking about his experience, it is really a how-to guide for getting sober and staying sober and getting the life you want, not just getting clean, but living a good life, living a life that makes you happy, it makes you fulfilled. And it is just, I'm so, I mean, you know, I have no business saying that I'm proud of this guy, but I really am. You know, he's an incredible guy, and I'm proud to know him. He's a terrific musician, and we've done a lot of very funny last second projects together that have all come out really well. So thanks to Billy Manis for entrusting me with a little bit of promo for you. Go get his book now, wherever books are sold. You can buy it from Bezos or go directly to the source. It's Kick-Ass Recovery by Billy Manis. That's Manas. So you're a fire and air sign. What's your main? I don't know as much about astrology as you, but I know you know, sun sign and moon sign. What are yours?
I'm an Aries sun and an Aquarius moon and rising. So I've got like the three main ones, I guess, are sun, moon, and rising. And so I've got like the sun is supposed to be like your main, you know, character, and then like your moon is like, you know, the internal, and the rising is like how you're perceived externally. So I have like all of this Aquarius energy around this like Aries identity. And it can get kind of confusing, and I didn't really know about, like, before, I just knew that I was an Aries, because, you know, like, you usually know your sun sign growing up because, like, somebody tells you or something. And I knew that Aries was supposed to be, like, you know, the warrior, like the first one, like the big personality, kind of stubborn, fiery, angry, and I took a lot of that in as my identity, but then realizing that I have all of this Aquarius energy, which is more fluid and a little bit lighter and calmer, but like Aquarius is also like the innovator, the alien. So getting in touch with a little bit more of that, and like what makes me like different and quirky, rather than just like the idea of what I imagine, like, you know, a fiery leader should be, has been definitely helpful to like find balance and stuff.
Yeah. I'm very interested in all of this stuff. I have to look into it more. I know, so obviously I know my sun sign, I'm a Gemini. I know my rising is also Gemini. I don't know my moon off the top of my head. I have to look that up. I was lucky enough to have a really wonderful step-grandmother who did my chart when I was born, and there's like a full chart for me somewhere that I just need to find and just, read all about it. But, you know, I think anything that helps you, like, understand yourself better is a positive thing, you know, which I think is why astrology is so fascinating to us. And even stupid shit like personality tests, you know, I think can be so interesting. And I'm always taking them when I find good ones online. And it's like, they don't usually tell me anything I don't know, but it's just so interesting to, like, try to get to know yourself a little better, and to, like, have those moments of, like, oh, like, this is a thing about me. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, for me, there was a big moment at, I used to work at a Girl Scout camp. I had like a few summers where I was a Girl Scout camp counselor. And there was this one week where I was like, you know, in charge of this like musical theater based group. So, my kids were all pretty chill, just like theater nerds. But there was like a camp wide game of capture the flag that a few of my girls wanted to participate in. And I was like, okay, I'll take you up to the field. We'll all play capture the flag, whatever. And we get up there and like all the other counselors are like, really hyping up their girls and getting super competitive. And like, I was doing my best. Yeah, we're going to win. We got this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's really just not me. But I was really trying to shine it on for the kids' sake. So the game gets going and like, all the kids are running around having fun. The competitive ones are competing, whatever. And I kind of like go into the middle of the field at one point and like I find like a few girls just kind of like hanging around. I'm like, what's up? What are you guys doing? They're like, like we don't really care. Like this isn't really our thing. I was like, okay, do you want to be rainbow warriors with me? And we can just go around and like be all of the colors of the teams and just free everybody who's like, and we just totally like threw a wrench in the whole thing. But we had so much fun. We were like skipping around, singing protest songs. Like we were being so ridiculous. And like some of the more like serious counselors were like, MK, like, what are you doing? Like, this is not the game. And I was like, you know what? These girls are now having fun who were not having fun before. And I am also having fun. And that was like a big moment for me of like, oh, I'm not competitive. I just like to fuck shit up and make up my own rules.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And like you find your tribe by like knowing what, like being really in touch with what you like and what you don't like and what you need.
Totally. And even being able to like head things off and be like, if someone's like, hey, I'm going to like do this thing. And you're like, that doesn't sound like something I'm going to enjoy. I will pass this time.
Yeah. I feel like we are taught so much that we have to do things that we don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's it obviously, like, if you don't like cleaning your house, like, sucks to suck, you should probably clean your house, but, or else you're going to have a dirty house. And if that's fine with you, like, totally, but, I feel like, people are like, well, you can't follow your dreams because you have to be realistic. And it's like, we can actually do whatever we want. As long as we have a plan and faith and motivation and determination. And that's something I've been like trying to internalize really heavily because, people say shit to you, right? And it's hard to, get rid of it because it's like, especially if you grow up with people saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't wear that, you can't act like this, like being an artist is really hard, you should probably do something else. And that's like coming from like a global scale, and it's fucked up, and it's definitely like capitalist garbage.
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I still struggle very much with that. I mean, especially now, I was in a decent position where like I had a job that like I liked enough to continue doing it. And, then thanks to COVID, I no longer had that job. And I'm like so much happier just making a podcast and like taking care of my dogs and gardening. And like, I'm feeling mentally better than ever, but I know that like there's still that part of me that was raised in a capitalist America that's like, you should get a job. It doesn't matter what it is. You should just go do it. And if you're miserable, that's probably better because it's good to suffer. Like, just all of this, like all these unhealthy thought patterns that come from, external sources that I don't actually believe. And like, of course, like I do need to make some money, but like, I should be putting that energy that I'm taking worrying about that towards like figuring out how to make money from the podcast or make money in a different creative way instead of like, just resigning and like getting another 9-to-5 that I hate.
Yeah. I was at the doctor's office the other day and it was a new place that I was at. And so I was doing like all the intake stuff and they asked me like, are you working? And I was like, well, yes and no. Like I'm working every day. Am I getting paid? No.
Right.
But, I'm more like, and then I was like, she just looked at me like, give me an answer. And I was like, no. But in my head, I'm like, that's not fair. I am working.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's really not fair. And I hate that we have to categorize things that way.
Yeah. It's a, lack of appreciation, I think, for the arts and for like creative individuality. Like we're supposed to be contributing to, the capitalist machine, and by trying to, create your own business or create your own, creative endeavor and make money from it, it's like people kind of give you this attitude like, how dare you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing that so much now with so many people who made their money off of the entertainment industry, whether they're artists themselves or whether they're, people who work for venues or, are roadies or managers or, there's so many jobs and so many people who are depending on the live music and the live performance industry who are now just like shit out of luck. And, you're seeing like people in the government or people who support the current government just kind of being like, well, you should have been an engineer or something. It's like, but everybody can't be an engineer. And also you were enjoying these shows too. Like,
like who's gonna, write the jingles and commercials or, who's gonna, I mean, that's a terrible example.
Who's gonna sell shit?
People love art, and like it's this idea that art isn't worth anything until it's like making you millions of dollars, because you most likely sold your soul to someone who decided that now you're worthy of being put on the airwaves. And I've been thinking about this a lot because it's like, even as artists, like, you say you want to be an artist, right? Let's say a musician for specificity. And people tell you like, okay, either you got to get a job and, make your music on the side, or, get a job teaching music, or you can give up your friends, your family, your livelihood, your free time, sleep, a healthy, diet or whatever, and you can put in 10,000 hours of, work into your art and promoting yourself, and maybe, just maybe, you will get picked up by a corporation who buys you.
Yeah.
And now they own you. And that's you making it. That's whack.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be owned by anybody.
No, I always thought that was insane. And I mean, I don't consider myself somebody who aspires to be a career musician because, I just don't think I would enjoy the lifestyle too much, the touring and everything. But like, I always thought like, the way to do it, if I wanted to do it, would be to have my goal to just be to sustain myself, not to be making millions of dollars, but to just be a working musician who consistently gets booked and can do a few tours a year and, make enough money to get by. And like, and I think people don't think, the average person who's not, a musician of any kind or an artist of any kind doesn't even really think about that level of success. They only think about like, top 40 level success where you're massive, but and you signed to a major record label. But yeah, like there's so many musicians who are successful who currently, I'm sure, are struggling, even though they have the name recognition and, probably the album sales and the ticket sales. But like, we're not on that like Atlantic Records level of success, and I'm sure it's a really scary time.
Yeah, definitely. I really wanted to go on tour again, and now that's not really a possibility. And like touring is such like a source of money for artists and for like this tier and like world of artists. And it's like, how are you supposed to get out there if you can't perform, especially because the algorithm of Instagram and Facebook and stuff likes to suppress any content that is like self-promotional, especially if you're, any shade of radical, and really suppress your content. And then it's like, the internet was supposed to be this like free space where, it's a free game and you can build your audience if you put the work in. But, now it can't be that easy. They've caught on to this strategy, and it's like, okay, well, if you want to use this platform, you have to pay to promote your content, or else, it's just going to get eaten by the algorithm. And it's like, okay, well, how do you build an audience when you can't build it online, when you can't build it on social media, and you can't build it in person?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of that's a funny example. It's kind of a microcosm of the problem with capitalism too, where it's like supposed to be that the free market will decide, and the best product will inevitably be the most successful product because the market will regulate, and people will only want to spend their money on the highest quality thing or the thing that's priced the best or whatever. Whereas actually what happens is there ends up being this bias towards either people who have inside connections in their industries, or there's all these ways to cheat the system that only the people who are already at the top of the game even get to find out about, which means that the little guy, unless they're very, very lucky, or their product is just fucking incredible, is probably never going to get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, to think about like all of the people who have made it top 40, like Taylor Swift's parents essentially bought her career. Not to say that Taylor Swift isn't talented, but like there's a lot of people who are talented, and like a lot of the times who gets that boost to mainstream elevation are people with a lot of money or connections, and it gets really frustrating because it feels like, well, damn, I don't have those things, like
I know.
I guess
absolutely. And I have to jump in because as everybody who knows me knows, I fucking love Taylor Swift. But you're absolutely right. Like, yeah, not everybody had, parents with the money to move to Nashville to, pursue your music career when you were 12, like that was her.
I love Taylor Swift too.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I know people are going to be like, MK, you didn't say anything about Taylor Swift. Like, yeah, no, I love Taylor Swift, but bitch is privileged. We know this.
Yeah, I mean, things can exist at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like it's a shame because I'm sure there are many, many artists who are as good as her, as songwriters, as performers, who will never have that head start and will never have that, that advantage that she had and that so many other artists have. I mean, yeah, and it's funny. I was talking with my friend Kasai on the last episode of this show about like kind of like the trap of feeling like kids, especially like young kids, feeling like they can get successful on platforms like TikTok and YouTube without too much effort. And sort of the trap of that, of like feeling like, they like fame is right there if they can just build the following. But like, even there's an algorithm, and there are like, there's hoops to jump through and games to play that like you probably don't even know about. So, I mean, yeah, like I am not on TikTok. Are you on TikTok? Do you know anything about this?
I tried TikTok for like a few days. Like, I was like, this actually looks kind of fun. And, like all the hip kids are on it because while I am technically Gen Z, like most of my friends are millennials.
Yeah.
And so I tried it for a couple days. I made like a couple videos. It's hard work. I was like, Jesus, like these people are really putting in elbow grease to make these little 10-second videos. Like, you gotta cut shit and like put in a background and like, cut like different scenes. Like it's a lot of work. And then I was informed that TikTok was suppressing Black Lives Matter content, which I also am sure that Facebook and Instagram are as well. But it's, everyone was kind of talking about it, and I was like, you know what, this thing is too much trouble. This is more trouble than it's worth.
This is not for me.
I'm gonna delete the app and have more space on my phone.
Yeah. I'm not surprised to hear that it's a lot of work. I mean, I find even Instagram to be a lot of work. Like, I enjoy Instagram, and I have too many accounts at this point because I have my personal account, and then like somehow I got swindled into having accounts for both of my dogs, and then I've got obviously for the podcast and for like one or two of my bands. Like, it's just it's a lot. And the podcast especially like is the one that I should be focusing on because this is the content that I want people to see, but it's so much easier to just like fire off like a quick, just fart on my personal Instagram instead of like actually putting in the effort to make things, curated and interesting and eye-catching and that not being my area of expertise in the first place. I mean, what's your Instagram strategy? Like, do you use it as a marketing tool for your music?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think as much as I should, because like I've always just been like, I do what I want, I post what I want, and definitely like every time I do try to post like something promotional for my music, it gets fucking eaten.
Yeah.
But so I try to like post a lot of my face because the algorithm loves face and hates words. So I also like, I am aesthetically inclined, and I am, you know, into dressing up, and like, you know, I'm also vain as all shit. So I'm fine with like, I post like, I try to post like something that includes like my face and like something aesthetically pleasing, and then try to like put the meat in the description, or I think that's what they call it, the description box.
Just the text.
The text. And lately what I've been, like, I'm trying to, like, create more of a strategy. So, like, what I've been finding that really resonates with people is people like to be uplifted, and people like to be motivated. And I think, like, I have received a lot of motivation from people on social media, so I think the only right thing to do is to, you know, pay it forward. And so I tried to like include as much like healing oriented and like radical oriented content in my words, as that is like what I'm truly passionate about. And lately, especially with the way that the social justice movement is really popping off, I think it's important to keep our heads in that game, and like in a growth and healing and radical mindset, so that we don't lose this momentum, because I think we're in a really good spot for a lot of growth as a collective, both, you know, emotionally and, you know, physically, meaning like in the physical realm, like actual changes in the way that we do things, because obviously, you know, the earth and the people are screaming like this isn't working. So yeah, that's my Instagram strategy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm glad that you are, you know, leaning hard into, you know, radical rhetoric and you know, supporting movements that need support. I'm curious, you know, you're down in Brooklyn, I'm, you know, a little bit upstate, and there were protests here, you know, there was a lot of Black Lives Matter activity that, you know, I was very happy to be able to attend, and things felt really powerful, and like there was movement for a while, and now things have kind of died back down. And I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing in the city, or if the vibe is different, if it still feels active.
So physically, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that it's happening because I see it on social media. I haven't really been leaving my house very much.
Mm-hmm.
I've had like a history of lung issues, and also just have a lot of anxiety around the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been to a couple rallies, and, you know, the momentum is there with, you know, the people who care.
Yeah.
And I think like people on social media and in general, especially people who haven't faced marginalization, are very quick to get distracted. And it's understandable, because, you know, there's always something new to talk about, and especially now, like, everybody's struggling with this pandemic. So it's easy for people to, you know, kind of lose track, but the fact of the matter is, like, this shit is still happening. You know, every week there's, like, a new case of something going on, of, you know, horrible police brutality, and just more and more examples of why the police should be abolished. And, it's weird, because the people in my circle are all very much still with their heads in the game.
Yeah.
But I do also acknowledge that a lot of people are indeed like kind of losing momentum.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I'm trying to be nice.
Well, I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of just keeping the messaging strong on social media, especially considering so many people are still not leaving their houses very much and are still, really getting most of their interaction through social media. So, I think, although obviously the ideal is that we would be marching in the streets and, guillotining Jeff Bezos, with where we're at, and what we can physically do at the moment, like it's not nothing to continue to share and continue to be loud on social media.
Yeah. And I think like people underestimate the power of mutual aid. Like even just in your own community, like find the people who are in need. I see a lot of people building community fridges, and I think that is one of the most important things that we could be doing right now is like literally taking care of our neighbors. Like we don't have to save the world in a day, but we can do a lot just for the people around us. Especially like I know a lot of, really cool grassroots organizations in New York, in the city, are doing a lot of really great, important mutual aid stuff. And I think, if anyone is curious as to like how to keep the momentum going and how to do something more than just post on social media that is actually directly helpful to people around you, is like look into community mutual aid and how, you can be of service, even if it's like making food, dropping off food, donating food. Like a lot of people are starving right now. The houseless problem is out of control, and people need help. And yeah, absolutely. And we that's brilliant, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that also makes me think of my neighbors down the street. So I live in generally a pretty liberal pocket, upstate. I live in it's technically just outside of Kingston, but my little hamlet that I live in is a little more socio-politically diverse, I guess you could say. So like, my house has a Black Lives Matter sign, and my neighbors down the street have a Black Lives Matter sign, and we have, defund the police signs. And then in between us, there's a lot of like Blue Lives Matter signs. So it's like, there's kind of this like quiet, passive war in the neighborhood. But then my neighbors down the street, who are my favorite neighbors, who are great people, went around door to door knocking on doors the other day with their masks on, and they were like, hey, we're starting a neighborhood pantry, and we're gonna like put stuff, if you have anything extra from your garden that you want to put in there, like you can, canned goods, whatever, like it'll just be there, anything you need, come and take, come and give. And it's like, I hope that kind of activity from, the neighbors with the Black Lives Matter and defund the police signs makes the neighbors with the Blue Lives Matter signs kind of stop and think like, like, these are good people who care about their neighborhood. And I think, so many of those people think that so many people like us just hate America and hate our communities, and that's and that's not what it is. We hate the system, but we want to love our neighbors. We want to be supportive of our neighbors and communities. So that's great advice, and I think we should all be as proactive as we can in those ways, as much as we're able to. Yeah, absolutely. That's really heartwarming to hear that. I'm so happy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And that's actually, we're coming up on about an hour of me sitting in my closet. So that's usually where I wrap it up. Chrrry, will you give us your socials and, where we can find your music and how we can support you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Chrrry Pop. Chrrry spelled with no E and 3 R's, and then pop, one word. And then you can find my music at chrrry.bandcamp.com. And right now, 50% of anything that I make on Bandcamp is going to NYC Shut It Down, who is a grassroots activist group based mostly in Harlem and the Bronx, but they do stuff all around the city, and particularly a bi-monthly food serve in Harlem and the Bronx. So if you're interested in supporting me and supporting them, you can check that out. The entirety of my album Blanquita is on there for sale, as well as some old EPs, and I have some new stuff that might be throwing on there pretty soon. Stay tuned. And you can find 2 singles of mine on Spotify and Apple Music and the streaming services. They are called The Drugs and Pretty Blue Car, and all of that, you can just search that and Chrrry it to Spotify. And yeah, if you follow me on Instagram, I have a flow page that has links to everything. So I'll see you there.
Wonderful.
Finger guns.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. And yeah, I'll put all the links in the episode description and all of that, and I'll let you know. It's going to drop on Monday, so yeah, keep a lookout. And yeah, thank you, dude. This was really great.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let me know if you need anything, and let's do this again sometime.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time. And once again, thanks to Unleashed Music for supporting this episode. That's unleashedmusic.com.